What's good, y'all? It's your humble Ronin here with another Ronin reaction to part 4 of the Whitney Webb interview. If you're new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Now, let's get.
If he's being protective, if he of intelligence agencies, why does he face an initial prosecution?
Well, obviously the sentence he got, I think in total was like 18 months, and it was like minimum security. He was allowed to leave the prison during the day to work.
Yeah, like a private office.
Yeah, but I think the most important part of it, in terms of what we're talking about, is that it was supposed to grant immunity to a lot of co-conspirators. Right. Which was supposed to include Ghislaine Maxwell, and actually there may be a Supreme Court case heard about this, because Maxwell's attorney is and Maxwell herself obviously is arguing that because of that agreement, which was, with the government, or at least the government of Florida, but I think it's the federal government, they should honor that and shouldn't have prosecuted her for the case that she was convicted for more recently. Yes. And I don't know. We'll see what happens there. It's complicated stuff. But a lot of the stuff Ghislaine is in prison for right now, I believe, is stuff that's alleged to have occurred earlier than the period most people think of. It's related to the 90s, as I understand it.
So she was trafficking young girls around the whole time?
I think it seems like it began, the operation seems to have begun in the early 90s, around the time Maxwell died and Epstein and Ghislaine are publicly seen together.
This all became a story in the UK, obviously, because of Prince Andrew. That's where our interest comes in.
Oh, and what's crazy about that relationship is that there were so many articles from like 2000, 2001, and 2002 about that basically say things like Ghislaine appears to be blackmailing Andrew for Epstein. Back then, it's nuts, and talks about Prince Andrew bringing his own massage table to be massaged by like Epstein's entourage and stuff, and that Ghislaine is charismatic and can wrap men around her little finger, and all sorts of. I mean, some of the quotes are just bonkers.
Did you ever see his interview with the BBC?
Just clips from it, where he claims like he's unable to sweat.
Unable to sweat, yeah, because of trauma from the Falklands. I watched the whole thing. It's one of the wildest interviews you'll ever see. I mean, fuck knows why he chose to do it, because he's a terrible liar.
Yeah, he probably thought it would work.
I mean, it totally backfired.
I'm sure powerful people like him are surrounded by yes men.
Yeah.
So that probably didn't help.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of been ostracized by the royal family now in some ways.
Yeah.
But he got away with it.
Yeah.
And the weirdest part of him was after. I mean, you're
but I mean, wasn't Prince Charles or King Charles at one point very close to Jimmy Savile and some of these other figures, Lord Mountbatten?
Yeah, I don't know the detail. I don't know, but I always thought it was wild that Prince Andrew, as a royal and essentially an heir to the throne of some sort, would go and visit Epstein and go for a walk in Central Park with him after a prosecution.
Some people say that Epstein and Andrew met as early as 91.
Wow.
That's alleged by Steve Hoffenberg, his former business partner, who did the Ponzi scheme with him at Tower Financial. And you can take that with a grain of salt if you want. I mean, obviously, Andrew himself says it occurred much later. I think he says 99.
Well, everyone has their own window, right?
Yeah. Everyone, I mean, again, there's so many issues of conflicting stories about who met who in the Epstein story, but it's because people want to absolve themselves of responsibility as much as possible.
Yeah.
So again, it's kind of complicated there, but there's allegations of it going back earlier. But what's interesting is that when Andrew was publicly known to be with Epstein and Ghislaine, and it was the subject of much media speculation in the UK, which is, 2000 to 2002 roughly. Andrew in that window is appointed to this role where he's the UK representative for international trade and investment, and in doing so has a major role in arms deals. Yes. Specifically lobbying on behalf of BAE Systems, which is a major UK defense contractor that previously worked very closely with Douglas Lease. In the Thatcher era, Lease was responsible for getting the Yamaha deal signed to benefit BAE. And that is one of the reasons for the extreme closeness to this day of British and Saudi interests.
We haven't talked about Leon Black yet.
No, we can.
We can. Well, so I think a lot of people want to see a black book of who the pedophiles are, who the people who are sleeping with children or sleeping with teenagers.
Really quick, the black book already exists, but
another black
one
book.
thing we haven't brought up is how the person who stole it from Epstein's house was his former butler named Alfredo Rodriguez. And Alfredo Rodriguez offered it. He was trying to get money for it, but he circled names in it, trying to give it to the victim's lawyer, saying this is the holy grail of who was responsible or who were major accessories to Epstein's sex trafficking crimes. Right? And so Ghislaine is circled, Leslie Wexner circled, Jean-Luc Brunel is circled, but so is Donald Trump. So is this guy named Flavio Briatore, who is known, I did an article about him recently. He introduced Naomi Campbell to Epstein, for example. But he's very close to Berlusconi, who we talked about earlier.
But is this why Musk came out and said the reason Trump's not releasing the files is because he's in them?
I mean, it possibly could be related. Because that's what the butler was saying, but no one can ask him why he circled the name because he's dead. He died in 2014.
Suspicious?
I mean, he allegedly took the book saying that he needed insurance because Epstein wanted him to disappear. So he seemed to view it that way. But then the victim lawyer that he was offering it to, Brad Edwards, tipped off the FBI, and the FBI set up a sting operation and then sent him to prison for obstructing justice. And he got the same sentence that Epstein got, 18 months, I believe.
How did he die?
I think his wife said that it was some type of fast-acting cancer.
Okay.
But either way, he can't be asked about it. But that does seem significant because, some people have said, oh, well, he wanted money, so he was just circling names of billionaires. But there's people in the Black Book that were much richer than some of the people circled there. Certainly much richer than Maxwell or Jean-Luc Brunel. Obviously, Leslie Wexner and Trump are very rich. And some of the other names aren't nearly as rich as other people that are in this book, like Tom Pritzker, who runs Hyatt Hotels, who is fabulously wealthy, for example. There's definitely, if you just wanted to pick billionaires to shake down, you would have just picked the highest net worth individuals, right? And that's not what is the case here. And also, a lot of the names that are circled, it's panned out that they were co-conspirators, right? Like Wexner, Maxwell, Brunel, for example. They're the most well-known associated names with the case, besides Epstein himself.
All right, so Leon Black gave Epstein, was it 158 million?
Yeah, a lot of money. I'm not an expert on I haven't written extensively about those dealings beyond what's been reported in the press, but I can talk about Leon Black going farther back because it's kind of interesting. He started off as a major guy at Drexel Burnham Lambert, which is this banking nexus that was important to the SNL crisis and also the junk bond explosion. Michael Milken was the architect of that. He was pardoned by Trump in his first term so he's no longer a felon. He's one of those guys that's rebranded as a philanthropist in recent years, actually very successfully.
Haven't they all done this?
Yeah, but major financial crimes went on, and the junk bonds were used to fuel a lot of these corporate raiders that ended up taking over major swaths of the American corporate landscape and really centralizing them within this group that is the subject of my book. And so Leon Black was a part of that. And what's interesting also,
it just seems to me that the as horrible as the sex trafficking that's going on is, that doesn't seem to be the thing that they're most concerned about. it seems to me that they're most concerned about all of the fraud and illegal monetary actions that they're taking, many of which at the expense of the American people. I feel, and I think that's kind of what the larger issue is in not wanting to release any of this data relating to Epstein, is that very savvy individuals and regular Americans can tie the financial web and weave it together to paint a larger picture. And I think that's what they're more concerned about, is the American people finding out that, which, I mean, it's kind of like an open secret already, that they have been defrauding us, they have been scamming us out of our retirement funds, retirement savings, you name it. And they've created that system purposely to do that, while simultaneously making us pay taxes and things like that, while they steal our money at the exact same time. So, I think that seems to be the bigger issue here, because, America is in a very weird situation where, like, we'll have people who have been, like, convicted of heinous crimes, but we'll still employ them. We'll still give them jobs. There are a lot of people who have committed abuse towards men and women, and they fail upwards. I mean, look at it from a local state standpoint. We've had, men and women out there who have severely abused men and women and children, and they get either a slap on the wrist, or they don't even get put on a registry at times. You see a lot of that with a lot of the women lately who work in the school systems, that have been arrested for sexually assaulting, students. A lot of them don't get put on registries. So, we seem to have inadvertently or by design have normalized the abuse of children to where we will overlook it to a certain extent, as long as the music's still good, their politics is still politicking. I mean, their corporation is still corporating. I mean, you name it. We still live in that type of climate. So that's just something to keep in mind as you observe the current state of affairs and the powerful individuals that inhabit it.
As an aside, is that his father, Eli Black, died rather suspiciously, falling out of a high-rise window when he was the head of United Fruit Company. That's the same fruit company that CIA did coups for. Yeah, and then it was taken over by Leslie Wexner's business mentors, Max Fisher.
Going back to your yacht explanation, there's a lot of people who seem to have got off the yacht.
Yeah, or they just they threaten deals, or they make mistakes and expose themselves too much. I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons. I mean, you can slip and fall off the yacht, right? Or you can deliberately decide to try and hop off. And I think, some of these things are related to that. But anyway, yeah, Leon Black obviously operates in these networks and has for a long time. Apollo Global Management is his firm that he funded with other ex-Drexel people, and what he's known for now. And his crimes with Epstein were investigated by an internal group at Apollo that exonerated him. But one of the lead authors on that is a guy named Alvin Buzzy Krongard, who used to be executive director of the CIA and is one of the main suspects in 9/11 insider trading.
It's a meta cartel.
Yeah, I mean, it looks that way to me.
You see, it's all about money. Like it just, everything ties back to money, and it's just the sex trafficking and the blackmail is a means to the end of more financial gains and power.
But Leon Black, it was supposedly for philanthropic purposes, right? And so this is one of those examples where Epstein is one of these types of figures that was important in the world of philanthropy from the post 2000s on, because things like the Clinton Foundation, the Gates Foundation, they were reported about by outlets like the Huffington Post as ushering in this new era of philanthropy through impact investing and things like that. And Epstein was intimately involved in setting up both of those. And Isabel Maxwell has very unusual ties to Bill Gates too, that go back to like the late 90s, early 2000s, that are very strange. So something weird was going on at Microsoft with Microsoft's top people. And then what a lot of people don't talk about either when they talk about the Gates relationship is that Epstein was also very close to the chief technical officer of Microsoft, Nathan Myhrvold, and actually went on a Microsoft business trip to Russia in the late 90s that Myhrvold was present for. That, apparently they can't explain, but I would argue that's one of those trans-ideological corporations things, because that Sam P.4 guy I mentioned earlier, the Maxwell confidant that talked about all this to Congress and was like, it's actually not a bad thing. He was a lawyer for Apple, and Steve Jobs referring to him was like, I don't know if he worked for the CIA or the KGB, but really he probably worked for both. But he was P.4 and other people were about getting Silicon Valley established in some of these other countries, and furthering this.
They say getting Silicon Valley established in other countries, but what they really mean is getting our intelligence agencies established in other countries so we can monitor, manipulate, exploit, and eventually take over.
The trans-ideological corporation model where, corporations run the world and the nation state and nation state sovereignty is irrelevant or doesn't exist.
Where's Leon Black now?
I believe he's still at Apollo, isn't he?
I
haven't followed him really ever that closely because I found other parts of the case more interesting, but I think he's one of those obvious signposts that show that people came to Epstein to manage money when they wanted to evade taxes or engage in money laundering or some other sort of financial funny business.
Or maybe wanted a certain type of entertainment.
Well, that's been alleged too.
Yeah.
Black denies it. Of course.
It's not like, hey, I'm a pedo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So if we move to where was it 2019 Epstein was rearrested or re-prosecuted the second time?
Yeah, it was SDNY going after him because the other cases, remember, took place in Florida.
Yes.
And so this is a totally different district going after him.
But you believe at this point he's being discarded?
So I can't say with any certainty I know why it was, but here's the thing. I don't think the U.S. government, specifically a district as known to be as corrupt as the Southern District of New York, SDNY, would be like outraged on behalf of the victims that Epstein had been let off so leniently 12 years before, and it was all because of Julie Brown at the Miami Herald. They decided to go after him. I mean, that just seems like a cover story to me. Not to imply that Julie Brown was involved in that, but I think her reporting gave them an opening to go after this guy, at least some faction, for something. Yeah, I think Epstein probably pissed off someone.
I want to talk to you about one of my sponsors, Incogni. And that means we're going to talk about the weird world of spam. And I don't just mean those spam emails that you get day after, because I wrote it down.
I do have a theory, but I mean, it again, it's hard to know, and this is inherently speculative, so I really want to preface that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, a lot of people, because I talk about controversial things, and I'm very critical of billionaires, like to twist my words. So trying to be careful.
This will end up a 5-second AI.
I have a major AI slop impersonation problem that we can talk about later because it's insane. But yeah. Sorry, we were talking about.
So you have
my theory about why.
Theory.
Yeah. So, John Brennan was CIA director under Obama, and there's a lot of weird things around him. So, for example, Michael Hastings, a lot of people have forgotten about him. He died suspiciously just as he was about to publish an expose on John Brennan. He had previously published something on Stanley McChrystal, who was a major general at that time, who had to resign because of the reporting. So there's been speculation about that, about what happened to Hastings. And then there was a WikiLeaks release after about how the CIA had the ability to take control of someone's car and cause something like what happened to Michael Hastings, who died in a weird explosion in his car.
And isn't that the same thing that happened to that recent actress whose car went haywire, crashed into a house, exploded, and then there's that very jarring video of her getting put into an ambulance. All of a sudden, she like jumps up trying to escape. They grab her, put her down, restrain her, and put her into the ambulance. Keep in mind, it was not EMTs that were doing this. It was just random firemen. I can't remember her name, but she was about to put out a documentary about pedophiles in Hollywood. And you remember that woman that oh god, what's that actor's name? Yeah, what's his name? He shot that woman. Alec Baldwin. All right. So do you remember Alec Baldwin? So remember the woman that he Anne Hirsch. Thank you, Reed Cornwell. I appreciate that. Anne Hirsch. Yeah, she was going to release a documentary about pedophiles in Hollywood, and then they take her out. Alec Baldwin, the woman that he shot, who was the cinematographer for his film Rust, her father worked for Ukrainian intelligence, and she was going to release a documentary on pedophiles in Hollywood. So I'm just letting you know, like, these, like, and you're wondering, okay, well, it's Hollywood, like, why are they taking these people out? Well, the CIA literally has an office in Hollywood, and most military films, most spy films, all have to get passed through CIA and get their approval. You know, the intelligence agency and Hollywood relationship is pretty much just two-faced.
Anyway, so John Brennan has that to his record. But I think, if not him, someone in his network, but probably him, got very mad at Epstein, because I think Epstein was likely involved with the rise of the current Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, who had a very uncharacteristic rise to power, I believe in 2017 or so. And Epstein was very involved in Saudi Arabia, going back to his relationship with Khashoggi. There's this issue, for example, in talking about his intelligence links. He had this Austrian passport that showed Epstein's face, but a fake name, and all of this stuff. And it was frequently travel. He was using it to frequently travel back to and from Saudi Arabia and all these other places. And I think his address on it was listed as being Saudi or something like that. And obviously Khashoggi was a very important player in Saudi world, and Epstein and him had a pretty important relationship. And as it relates to John Brennan had been CIA station chief in the capital of Saudi Arabia for a long time, and the crown prince that was deposed by Mohammed bin Salman, we'll call him MBS for now, that MBS took out of power, had been the guy that Brennan had basically groomed to be the new crown prince. That was like the CIA's golden boy, you could say.
So Epstein interfered.
Well, I think Epstein was part of the group that put MBS into power. Pictures of them figured prominently together, figured prominently in his townhouse. I think Epstein was an architect of MBS's Vision 2030, which was his policies for a post-oil Saudi Arabia. And Epstein appears to have been managing Saudi wealth funds, at least one sovereign wealth fund of theirs. And I say that about Vision 2030 because one of the first things MBS did as part of that was to promote Sophia the robot. He gave her citizenship to be like the first robot to be granted citizenship. But the people that made that robot, Ben Goertzel and Hanson Robotics, heavily funded by Epstein. So I think it's very likely he was the one that connected him, and he was very interested in AI and robotics, transhumanism, and a lot of the stuff that's sort of within Vision 2030.
But ultimately, his what he was doing was working against U.S. interests at that point.
Well, I mean, again, this is a transnational thing, and so you have transnational factions too. But basically, I think it's pretty clear that the Obama faction is different than the Trump faction, right? And so you're having someone like John Brennan getting pissed off at whoever took out his favored leader of Saudi Arabia and put in.
So essentially what Whitney Webb is saying is that the world is run by various corporate, military, pharmaceutical, cartel factions. And it seems like Epstein started favoring one side when he should have just been a neutral player from the get-go. That's what I'm getting. That's how I'm interpreting what she's saying right now. What do you guys think?
MBS. Because MBS was too young to be crown prince. It's about seniority in Saudi Arabia. It doesn't go father-son like that because, I mean, when you're king of Saudi Arabia, you have like an insane number of kids, right? And so it tends to be passed through uncles and, you know, it's seniority. And he came to power in his early 30s. And then he put all these other Saudi royals and prominent aristocrats, you know, in the Ritz-Carlton. I don't know if you remember this. They were like hung upside down.
It's the meeting.
The shakedown.
Yeah.
All of that stuff happened. So there was obviously a big shakeup of the power structure of Saudi Arabia, which has always been very close to U.S. interests when he comes to power. And MBS not only had close ties to Epstein, he also had really close ties to Jared Kushner. Apparently Kushner and Adam Newman of WeWork, the Israeli guy, were texting each other all the time, and they were going to bring peace to the Middle East. And help and develop what would, you know, part of what would become the Abraham Accords together.
I wonder how much involvement Jared Kush has currently in what's going on in Israel and Palestine. We don't hear much from him anymore. He kind of just disappeared. But I remember him being very, very actively involved in all of that.
Okay.
So obviously MBS is tight with the Trump crowd. And so even if Epstein and Trump didn't like each other personally at this point, that doesn't mean that the power structure that has enabled them both to do their thing, I mean, they still operate in that, arguably. I mean, that's what it looks like to me. So I think, Epstein pissed off interests related to John Brennan. And John Brennan was also an architect of Russiagate. Right, which was also aimed at Trump. And then the whole Jamal Khashoggi thing happens in MBS's charm offensive where he's like, I'm a reformer. I'm here in Saudi Arabia. I'm going to change everything up and open movie theaters and let women have some rights, you know, and all of that.
Drive a car.
Yeah. He paid a ton of money for that. And then the Jamal Khashoggi thing just evaporated it like that, you know? And so I think there was stuff that went on to kind of get at Trump and MBS.
So they kill that reporter to stifle any of that progression. Nasty. That's nasty.
And I think also, of course, Epstein, not long after all of that. But again, Epstein, you know, had his hand in too many pies for it to be like fleshed out to the full extent, you know? So it had to be kind of a controlled demolition. And what's interesting, so I brought up William Barr a few times. He's basically the Republican CIA mop-up man. But one of the main lawyers for Epstein victim, Stanley Pottinger, is basically that for the Democrats. Mm-hmm.
So you have two cleaners, one for the Republican Party and one for the Democratic Party. And man, if I could find that clip from a Senate hearing. But this senator, he came up there and he was like, I forgot how many, but he said there are currently somewhere around several hundred active sexual assault investigations going on against, like I said, hundreds of senators and congressmen. And like, if you think about it, like think about the amount of like sexual abuse that we don't know about that goes on our Capitol in terms of just interns and between senators and what have you. Like, we think it's bad about what's going on in the military, Navy, even intelligence agencies, but imagine how bad it is at our Capitol, right? And you essentially have two cleaners, who just go around and cleaning up Democrat and Republican messes, majority of which probably involve some form of sexual exploitation.
And his law partner, Brad Edwards, is the one that tipped the FBI off about the guy with the black book and got him sent to prison. I mean, there's kind of some weird stuff there. So anyway, if you want to do a controlled demolition, so to speak, of Epstein, you need to have at least some control of both sides. And it's interesting that one of the main prosecutors for I think Maxwell's case and then later the Diddy case is James Comey's daughter, Maureen Comey. I mean, you have like a lot of powerful connections here, and I think a part of it is aimed at controlling both sides because you can't have too much come out,
Yeah. And so at that point, they've got compromise on Epstein himself anyway.
Well, sure.
Yeah. And so he's done. He's cooked, facing prosecution. Do you think he killed himself?
Yeah, so I don't buy the official narrative about how he killed himself. But I also don't want to say I know what happened authoritatively because I don't think anyone does.
No.
Right? Because even now with attempts to release footage and whatever, it's inconclusive and doesn't show anything.
And there's like a bit of footage missing and it flickers, right?
Yeah.
It's like they're not very good.
No, but I think they were just hoping that, it would be enough to keep people quiet and memory hole it and make people
move
on.
Opposite.
Huh?
It's done the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, a lot of...
That's funny. They're never really good at cleaning up their jobs. They will go through the most elaborate plans to execute their jobs, but then they fail at the cleanup. I don't know if it's because sometimes these things are just too big of a plan that they can't account for everything. But I mean, they and also at the same time, they'll just like stab themselves in the foot with their own words and their own actions. Like I said before, how are you going to go say that like there's no such thing as no Epstein data and files or anything like that, and then for years you're saying there's data. Trump was saying there was, Pam, all of them were saying there is, and then all of a sudden there isn't. Like, they're so bad at their jobs. I don't know if it's a lack of like dedication or just this the watered downness of these intelligence agencies and these operations, that they just don't have the same type of people that used to do it back in the day. I don't know. They just seem to be getting more and more sloppy. I don't know if that's just desperation or just they just know that they can get away with it and they have no problems being sloppy while doing it.
A lot of poor calculations, I think, were made,
Do you think this is just going to fade away now?
I mean, I hope not, obviously, because I think it's a huge miscarriage of justice. Because, I mean, even beyond the sex trafficking stuff, this is a network involved in extreme financial criminality. There's a lot of weird stuff with Epstein, for example, in the 2008 financial crisis that hasn't been appropriately investigated, which was, in essence, a huge wealth transfer. Um, from the bottom 99 to the top 1%. And of course, Epstein was a major banker for the top 1%.
Nobody went to jail.
No, but he basically was the pin that popped Bear Stearns, and then Bear Stearns is absorbed by Epstein's new bank, JP Morgan. And do you know who picked Jamie Dimon to lead JP Morgan? Well, a little farther back than that. JP Morgan, it was Bank One merged with JP Morgan, and then he became the new CEO. Diamond did, but how did Diamond become head of Bank One? Well, it was the Crowns and Leslie Wexner's right-hand man, besides Epstein, Jack Kessler. Or I guess you could say left-hand man. He has two hands. One's Epstein, one is the Kessler guy. Because Bank One was like a Ohio-based bank. The guy that built it up was one of the mentors to Wexner.
Exactly, Reed.
Close network there.
Sloppy.
And also had weird Iran-Contra banking links. So, and Diamond was Sandy Weil's protege, who was involved with the Glass-Steagall stuff for Citigroup and all of that. Yeah, so
it is still weird that Trump came in and said, "We're going to release all the files. We're going to release everything."
Well, I think they wanted to make people think that this was going to be a new era of transparency, but it obviously has not been that. So,
what was Jack Posobiec saying? The most transparent administration in history.
Some documents have been made that are notable. They've been released about things like the MLK assassination, the JFK assassination. Cool. But those were a long time ago. All the criminals that orchestrated those conspiracies are dead.
Yeah.
Or at least almost dead. I mean, Ruth Payne is still alive as it relates to JFK stuff. They could bring her before Congress, I guess, but we'll never talk to her. But that's besides the point. So, in the case with Epstein, it's too recent. Yeah, so many people are alive. Some of them are in power.
Well, that's what I'm getting at, because I'm look, if Trump's going to come out and say, "I'm going to release the files," I'm assuming he knows himself he's fairly clean in his relationship with Epstein, fairly. But when he gets fully exposed to the files, who within his network is exposed?
Sure. Well, that's the whole thesis of this recent investigative series I've been doing called First Friends, which is about people who are close to Trump that likely have something to lose if some of this stuff were to be fleshed out more.
Such as?
Well, one of them is Flavio Briatore, who I brought up earlier, who is, again, we already discussed, very close to Berlusconi. And he basically, Michele Sindona, who I mentioned, the guy who died from the cyanide-laced coffee, his successor at a lot of his shady companies, Briatore became a mentor, or not a mentor, the apprentice, the underling of that guy, whose name was Attilo Dudo, I believe, and he died in a car bomb that was never solved. And then Briatore left town, got tied to I think he went to Milan and got tied up with all sorts of sort of underworld characters, and there were wiretaps of him talking to crime guys, and he eventually had to become a fugitive from Italy and establish himself in the USVI. He became the representative for the Benettons of United Colors of Benetton fame, and later became best known as a Formula One guy because he was coaching the Benetton team. And Michael Schumacher was his main guy. But then he got caught, doing race fixing scandals while banking with the HSBC Swiss accounts that were all very suspect. The timing of that overlaps. So anyway, Briatore is one of these circled names, as I mentioned earlier. So Epstein's butler thought they were instrumental, or thought he was instrumental to what was going on there. And at the event where Naomi Campbell says Briatore introduced her to Epstein, you can see a teenage Virginia Giuffre being taken, following Maxwell around like her shadow. I think it was on Briatore's yacht, the party. And Briatore also was close to another Victoria's Secret angel, Heidi Klum, fathering one of her children. And I think his most recent wife after that was a former employee of Berlusconi, who was a model that marketed the Wonder Bra, something like that. but he has a lot of connections to the world of modeling that are, like Epstein, rather suspect.
Yeah, I mean, just all through this, like I say, there's this big network of. I talked about these layers. One of the layers seems to be modeling.
Yeah.
Like it's ultimately it's
it's
rich
crazy.
guys and their perversions.
Well, yeah. So.
Well, look what happened with the Abercrombie and Finch guy. He was caught trafficking young men through the Abercrombie and Finch modeling agency, and that guy was, pretty much a billionaire in some respects.
So my most recent article on this is about another modeling guy named Paolo Zampoli, who is best known now, I guess, because, people have accused Melania and Trump of first being introduced by Epstein. I think Epstein claimed that he first introduced them at some New York fashion event. And the first couple say no, it was at the Kit Kat Club. It was Paolo Zampoli that introduced us.
Okay.
But Paolo Zampoli is a protege of this guy named John Casablancas. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Nope.
He is, the face of elite model management, but that was a merger between his agency and the agency of this guy named Gerard Marie, who then became head of Elite's European branch. And Marie has been accused of trafficking women, just like Jean-Luc Brunel. The accusations are very similar. One woman accused him of trafficking her to Adnan Khashoggi, actually, in the 1980s. That Khashoggi paid $50,000 just to, meet her, and then she was pressured into having a relationship with him. And basically, a lot of these women, they are taken to these countries with all these promises, and then they are penniless, and to have success in the industry, predatory relationships develop because these modeling executives like Marie demand things if they want to have success. And it's very
Let's not forget that this also happens to men. Like I said with the Abercrombie and Finch, like he was doing this with the men. He was trafficking young, aspiring male models. So I know that it's mostly women that they're focusing on, but let's not forget that they also traffic young men as well.
It seems like a very dark industry. If you're looking at a lot of these people at Elite, I mean, including Casablancas, who was accused of exploiting.
There you go, Reed. See how it all connects?
Casablancas admitted
See how it all
his
connects.
Sexual preference was for what he called child women.
God.
And look what he just said. His sexual preference was for child women. And remember that professor in California who came up with the term minor attracted persons? They were trying to normalize pedophilia as just a type of sexual preference that should be not ostracized, even though it's immorally reprehensible and disgusting. And we can get into the origins of that and how it ties to Greek culture and why it's prolifically seen in Western Europeans, but that's a whole nother conversation. Yeah, you're exactly right, Reed. You're exactly right.
And his third wife he met when she was 17, and he married her that same year. So she was technically a minor in Brazil.
There's a huge network of victims here, then.
Yeah, well, a lot of, it's strange because some of it seems like Epstein, in terms of his trafficking, I mean, he wasn't, there's the well-known scandal, but it seems like also, so like Epstein would lure women with promises of paying their scholarships and offering them modeling jobs. And he didn't, for most of the known victims, he didn't do that. He just used that as a lure and then abused them and discarded them. But there were some women that he did do that for. And then they get married off to very powerful people. And some of them are the women he took to the White House. One of them he basically handed off to Trump. That was his girlfriend before Melania. Her name's Selena Middelfart. She's a Norwegian heiress. Another one was Frances Hardin that he passed off to John Doyce, who is a very a commodity trader, very tied up in the network I talk about in my book. An oil trader guy who's very, very sus. And then you have someone like Nicole Junkerman. She's seen on the arm of people like Paul Allen. She's reportedly used to blackmail U.S. senators on Wexner's UK property with Epstein. and she was Elite Models previously, and then another model, Melanie Walker. She basically is now dating a top guy or married to a guy at Andreessen Horowitz, but she was Epstein's science advisor and then Bill Gates' science advisor. But during a time when Bill Gates said he didn't even know who Epstein was. Strange. But it seems like, Elite Models, there's something weird that was going on there. And that's not to say that every woman that modeled for them had this experience, but there are some that stand out, and it seems to have happened often enough.
Well, it's like rich, powerful guys want hot women. And...
Yeah, and I should also say that Gerard Marie was involved with the MC2 agency that was Brunel and Epstein and a focus of the sex trafficking case, but he's never been charged.
If it feels like if
the French case is dead in the water, they don't want to go there for some reason. But if Gerard Marie was pimping out young models to people like Khashoggi, that would be why.
It feels like if all of this was released, all the files were released, this would be a complete collapse of the political and financial elite.
Well, okay, if the political and financial elite are, part of this court cartel that is born out of organized crime and intelligence, like maybe they should collapse.
Oh no, and we want it
because do we want to be ruled over them?
No,
and I don't. Yeah, but the problem is they're both parties in the U.S.
Yeah,
and arguably they're both parties in the U.K. too. The core of Keir Starmer's political network is a man named Peter Mandelson, a long-time Labour Party operator, and the two people that Epstein was closest to in the UK were Mandelson and Prince Andrew. So it's a transnational problem. And so, the reason Keir Starmer's in is because the last government was so terrible. And so, the next cycle, people will be like, I want nothing to do with labor, and they'll just go back, and it's ping pong from one side to the other, but nothing fundamental changes. And so the same is true for the U.S., but what they need to control is perception. And so I think in the U.S., they've done a much better job of that than in the U.K., where, the Trump campaign created the perception they were going to be so radically different, not just from Biden, but from Trump's first term, right? In terms of transparency and all these major changes. And so they picked a lot of people who Trump's base trusted from, the years prior, like Dan Bongino, a podcaster who was like, release the files, being put in as a deputy FBI guy, and Kash Patel, release the files, being put in as head of the FBI, but then they turn around once they're in power and are like, trust us, there's nothing to see here. And I think they thought because those guys had cultivated so much trust with Trump's base, they would believe them, and that would be that,
It does feel like it will be washed over.
Imagine hiring a podcaster to be your deputy director of the FBI. What a world we live in. We're going to wrap it up here. Let's save the last part for maybe tomorrow, if not Thursday. We'll see what I have going on my schedule tomorrow. But like I said, it just seems to be all about monetary control through the guise of exploitation. And in wrapping up with this podcast, it just seems like more and more, it's like the abuse is just a means to an end for these people. And it just seems like it's not even an afterthought. It's just part of the routine, part of the programming. And it's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Yeah, hey man, read every scandal they just wash away. Don't be surprised with the Charlie Kirk thing when they try to wash away this. They're already trying to. They're already trying to by politicizing it, and it's just unfortunate. And even like you Capriana 22. Yeah, they are sacrificial victims. I mean, even you can argue it and say Charlie Kirk was a sacrificial victim in and of itself. It's every single one of these situations like I said in previous streams, this just it's a a ritualistic cult that practices dark magic to maintain power over all of us. And it doesn't always have to be like, it just seems for them, whether it's war, whether it's trafficking, whether it's money, whatever hurts us fuels them. So they don't have to always physically hurt us. They can emotionally hurt us, and that in and of itself fuels their need for more power, more control. The irony of it all is that they can have all the money in the world, but it's not going to go with them when they pass on, at the end of this journey. The pharaohs have proven that quite eloquently, that you can bury all of your gold and your slaves with you, but they ain't coming with you on the next life. Yeah, what goes up must come down, and I think a lot of that is starting to come down. As easily distracted as Western civilization is, they're waking up to it. The American people aren't as stupid and as ignorant as they claim to say that we are. And despite the political turmoil that's going on, there are more people out there that I see who are more critical of everything than I see that are indoctrinated. And most of that indoctrination that we see, it's a microcosm. Hey, Reed, man, you're not wrong. At first I thought it was extraterrestrial. At this point, it might be interdimensional. um, it's funny that you say that, Reed, because there have been a couple times I've wanted to write down a script on a couple things that I've been thinking about in terms of that stuff, and maybe I will, maybe I won't. We'll see. But yeah, there's obviously they're getting fed off of something much higher than what they claim to think that they are. It's a very interesting and fascinating avenue to explore, but it can definitely bring you into that black pill world, one of which I have no interest in ingesting. But that'll conclude part 4 of our Ronin reaction to